I reserved the bookstore for the storm, what we admitted between shelves. I didn't reserve the bookstore to read. I reserved it to stop guessing. By dusk, the weather app had stopped being polite and the river had started practicing its bad habits. The city sent out the message it keeps for nights like this. Stay inside if you can. Tie down what pretends not to move. At 9:12 p.m., I got the text from my wife that used every correct word in the wrong order. Board dinner turned into a storm lock-in. Might crash at the office. Don't wait up. Riley isn't superstitious, but she is precise. She never uses storm lock-in, unless she wants me to imagine her with the colleague, who knows how to stack sandbags and sentences without upsetting either. Miriam, who owns the used bookstore on Kent, keeps one brass key under the register for people who have proven they put things back the way the world wants them. I earned it once by helping her rebuild the front table after a delivery decided patience wasn't a virtue. "You sure?" she asked when I called. "We close at 9. There's a leak by philosophy that thinks it's a metaphor." I told her I wanted the second floor desk and the lights by the travel section and would leave cash in the tip jar for the towels I would inevitably use. "No judgments after 2, she said, "and if a city has a conscience, it lives in women who run places where paper survives. The storm does enough of that." Riley and I have been married 9 years. Lately, the house has felt like a country that votes correctly and forgets to celebrate. We are competent at affection and excellent at logistics. We keep the weather dignified. We have made mercy into a chore. 2 weeks ago, I showed up at a gala half an hour early and watched her talk to a man with sleeves shoved to his elbows and the posture of someone who knows where to stand when other people are interesting. Afterward, she said his name was Felix, and then said she liked not being required to talk about him. I nodded like a person who trusts language even when it hasn't earned it. I let myself into the store at 10:05 and turned the lamps the way Miriam had taught me, one by travel, one at the front table, one on the stair landing like a lighthouse that knows its district. The place smelled like rain and linen and the quiet bravery of glue. I propped towels around philosophy and a bucket under the leak, which had the decency not to drip in iambic pentameter. I took the stairs and sat at the second floor desk, the one with the glass half-wall that lets you look down at the first floor without pretending you're better than anyone. They arrived at 10:27, voices pitched for weather and courtesy. Riley in a black dress she bought the week our marriage remembered it could afford to be more than reasonable. Layla from her team with a raincoat, and the way she treats rooms that aren't sure they belong to her. Felix with sleeves shoved, and a tote bulging with gaffer and a folding knife, and the kind of competence you mistake for permission if you're bored. The 4 of them shook water out of their hair and laughed as if their heads could warm the city. From the desk, I watched them lay out snacks on the front table, move the travel lamp to keep the shadows honest, and argue about whether a flood counts as an event for donors or an event for humans. I could hear the rhythms without hearing the nouns. Riley leaned on her elbows when she listened. Felix kept his distance, and the distance meant something. He noticed me first. People who manage crises in rooms full of polite furniture develop a sixth sense for watchers. He looked up at the glass half-wall and nodded. Not guilty, not sorry. Just the acknowledgement of a man who knows more knots than cities. Riley followed his glance, and for a moment let the muscles around her mouth forget which job was theirs. Then she remembered and gave me the smallest tilt of her head, the one that says you are not a ghost but we both agree not to choose theater. I came down the stairs because being seen hiding in a bookstore is a posture I resigned at 25. "You picked the right bunker," I said. "The leak in philosophy is poetic. Travel is dry." Riley smiled with the precise amount of relief I deserved. "Grant," she said, "you hate storms." I hate sentences that don't grant cross-examination, I said, and I know where Miriam keeps the buckets. Layla did us the kindness of being tired. I'm taking the back office sofa, she said. I don't need to witness anybody's marriage behaving well. She squeezed Riley's arm and went upstairs, leaving the lamps circled to the three of us. Felix stood one respectful step behind the front table the way you stand near a sleeping dog you like. He didn't put his hand out. He didn't put it away. He looked me in the face and said, "Do you need me to leave, man?" "I need you to be exactly there," I said. "If you're better at the weather than I am, you can tell me where to stand." "I'm good at moving weight," he said. "I don't move what isn't mine." A branch knocked complaining against the window. The river's wet breath found the door and tested the weather stripping. Riley didn't drink water. I didn't either. We stood in a triangle that knew its mathematics and waited for a sentence that could live in it. "I kissed him," she said. It came out like a willingness to be punished and a refusal to accept a judge. 2 weeks ago, elevator at the museum, between the mezzanine and the lobby. It was quick and stupid and tasted like mint and sleep debt. He said my name like a door closing. We never did it again. I stood too close to his shoulder tonight when the streetlights went out. I liked what my neck did. I did not like what my stomach did. "Okay," I said, because anything else would be theater. I wanted to hit him. "Do it in your head," Felix said, not flinching. "I'll spot you on the ego press." I could have forgiven him for making me laugh. I forgave myself instead. "I rented a bookstore," I said. "That requires at least one honest thing." I turned to Riley. "Invite me when you're interesting, not just when you're frightened." "I am inviting you," she said. "You walked 11 blocks in a storm because you hate guessing. That's the beginning I wanted." We moved between the travel stacks. The lamp made a pocket of amber and paper and foolishness that believed in us. Riley leaned back against a shelf and put her palms on the spines as if asking other people's words to hold her up. I stepped into her and felt the room decide to forgive us if we kept our clothes. I kissed her slowly because the first kiss in a storm should be a declaration of jurisdiction, not a rehearsal. She answered with the kind of hunger you can't fake. My hands found the line where her dress became a problem for the morning. She made a sound you can only make when the city stops pretending it isn't listening. Felix stood where he had promised to stand, behind the table, eyes on the door. When a gust of wind tested the latch, he put his palm against the wood and murmured something architects would respect. When we stopped, he looked at the lamp so we wouldn't have to look at him and said, "I'm going to check the alley," like a man admitting he knows where his usefulness ends. He took the tote and his competence and left. The bell didn't ring for him because Miriam hates bells. Riley wiped rain off my cheek with her thumb and smiled the sad smile you use when the good version of you arrives slightly too late and you love it more for the effort. "Do you still want to hit him?" she asked. "I want to thank him for not being a thief," I said. "I want to thank the elevator for stopping at the lobby. I want to take you home and let the power go out where the regrets have names." "We can't leave the bookstore," she said, glancing at the door like it might be a moral. "Miriam will need someone to unbury her from poetry if the river decides it improves on Whitman." "We'll stay," I said. I sat her on the floor between travel and philosophy, and we leaned our backs against the shelves. I pulled her blanket off the front table and put it over our legs. We listened to leaves slap glass like 1,000 wet petitions. She put her head on my shoulder and took my hand and put it on her chest and left it there like a note. "You know what the worst thing is," she said. "It wasn't even romance. It was competence. He was steady, and my neck paid attention, and I thought that meant I needed to do something big to prove I was alive." "You don't need big," I said into her hair. "You need invitation." I kissed the top of her head and then the place behind her ear and felt her breath change in the way that means yes without drafting a treaty. We slept in 2-foot segments. At 3, the wind sounded like a bad friend telling better stories than you. At 4, the rain behaved like it regretted itself. At 6, a sliver of mean daylight pried up the edge of the sky and let us see what survived. The river had changed its mind about sidewalks. Philosophy had changed its mind about the bucket. Miriam called at 6:15. "You alive?" she asked. I told her we were, and so was travel, and that we had folded the towels like people who deserved a country. "No trials after 2, she said, and you can tell a city has a conscience when dawn repeats the night's advice. By 9, our friends from the community center were texting for flood hands and dry socks. We walked there because cabs were pretending to be boats. The gym smelled like lemons remembering their childhoods. Riley moved through the room with clipboard grace and a mouth the volunteers found persuasive. Felix stacked tables like a man who can talk gravity into using its inside voice. He saw me and nodded the exact distance. I nodded the exact distance back. When he took a break, he came over with 2 paper cups and put one in my hand and said, "We're good." Not as a performance, but as a way of asking whether the floor still intended to hold. "We're better," I said. "It's annoying." He smiled into his cup like a person who believes in dull miracles. "I'll take better," he said. "Dull gets more done." Riley passed and brushed her fingers against my wrist, daylight legal, and it felt like a license renewed. In the corner of the room, a kid tried to roller skate in shoes and fell twice, laughing. A woman in a yellow raincoat brought a box of something that steamed and pretended not to be donuts. We ate before we tried to win because hunger makes trials where they don't belong. We did not turn the bookstore into a story we tell in public. We taped Miriam's brass key to the side of our fridge under the magnet shaped like a small boat we bought one summer we didn't ruin. Sometimes, when the house tries to audition for courtroom, we walk to Kent and press our faces to the glass and let travel and philosophy decide which of us needs the amber lamp. Sometimes Riley texts come and mean stand next to me while I do something I am good at. Sometimes I text come and mean watch me be interesting without a meeting on the calendar to bail me out. Sometimes the neck pays attention, and we're both allowed to be pleased. We didn't stop admiring other people's competence. We did stop confusing it with permission. Heat is a temperature, not a vote. We eat before we try to win. We sleep when the clock grows unkind. We put our hands on each other in daylight as if the sun issues licenses. Every now and then, when a storm threatens to make us interesting in the wrong way, I call Miriam and borrow the brass key and leave cash in the jar and sit at the second-floor desk to watch the lamp do its work until the room agrees to be honest. The river keeps its habits. So do we. And when the city asks whether we have anything to add, we say, "Not tonight, thanks," and go home in a body that has been permitted to be believed.